The unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, we can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So we've just had our festival for Great Master Dogen, and you've heard a bit about him during our ceremony. He was the monk from Japan who went to China because he couldn't find anybody in Japan who felt he could really teach him the truth. So he went to China, which was a terrible, hard journey, and looked for a teacher and found Tendun Nyojo, Ru Jing, I think his name is in Chinese. I'm sure the Chinese wouldn't pronounce it that way, but there we go. And learned from him and brought the Dharma back to Japan. He had been, his family had been kind of high politically and wealthy, and I think his father must have died early, and his mother died when he was 12. And at her funeral, he saw the incense smoke rising, and had this just great insight into impermanence. Things don't last. Everything changes. There's nothing in this world on which you can completely rely. And that's what inspired him to become a monk at a very young age. So he goes to China, comes back to Japan to teach. And it was really hard. You know, he set up a temple and had all kinds of difficulties. People of other sects would be against him. Finally, he settled up in Eihiji, up in the mountains, built his temple there, and taught. And for many, he wrote this wonderful work called the Shobogenzo, and for centuries it was forgotten. They hid it away so carefully, people forgot about it. And hundreds of years later, just a couple of 100 years ago, they discovered it again, thought, whoa, this is really good. But we've venerated him ever since. Even before we found the Shobogenzo, he was greatly venerated. So Dogen Day is a big day for us. And I am going to talk a little bit about one little section in the Shobogenzo that sounds so simple, so easy, so profound. This is it. The way to Buddhahood is easy. They who do not perpetrate evil, they who do not try to grasp at life and death, but work for the good of all living things with utter compassion, giving respect to those older and loving understanding to those younger than themselves. They who do not reject, search for, think on, or worry about anything, have the name of Buddha. You must look for nothing more. The way to Buddhahood is easy. It's so simple and straightforward, and it's so hard to do, you know. When we try to put it into practice, each one of these little phrases is really simple, and each one would merit a whole Dharma talk, never mind a whole lifetime of study and practice, actually. And in each one, don't perpetrate evil. How simple could that be? And yet, when we really try to practice it, it's hard. Evil in Buddhism is that which creates suffering, whether for ourselves or other beings. Creating suffering for others, actually, is awfully easy to do. You know, just an unkind word to somebody, trying to get something at the expense of somebody else, even a little thing, you know, thinking angry or resentful thoughts about somebody, even if you don't give voice to them. It's a kind of a harm in a subtle way there. It doesn't mean if an angry thought arises, we try to kind of squash it down. We just let it go and don't nourish it. Nourishing angry thoughts is the thing. Cherishing resentment, dislike, so forth. And these are all little ways we might do harm. Then there's all the big ways, like killing people and killing animals and, you know, rushing around with guns, shooting people and all that stuff. But even the little ways, which we're all prone to, those are ways in which we do harm. And you can't not do anything and just sort of sit in your room doing nothing lest you harm somebody, because that doesn't work. Because you've also got to try not to harm ourselves. And that's much more subtle. Try not to harm oneself. Creating suffering for oneself. We don't always recognize it, because we may have these, habitual patterns of dwelling on our past hurts and resentments, dwelling on regret for things done and not done that happened in the past, feeding anger and resentment against somebody, or fear, sort of cherishing fear and making ourselves even more afraid, worrying excessively about things. We can't fix everything. We can't prevent things from happening. Or the things we worry about, I think I said yesterday, they may not happen. The things that happen are the things we haven't thought about that happen anyway, and we just deal with them. So when they say, in a sense, why worry? Well, that's easier said than done. If there's anybody here who never worries about a thing, come and talk to me. Tell me how it's done. There's so many things that seem so simple, and yet they're really hard to practice. And it's not that things don't arise. It's just we don't need to grab onto them. If self-judgment arises, I'm a terrible person, oh dear, just go and live in a hole, well, that's a suffering. But we can let that thought come and maybe not completely buy into it. Or maybe I do have something going for me, Or just relinquishing the anger or the resentment, the old story that comes up maybe, if we have that sort of tendency to nurse resentment or to nurse fear or whatever it might be, despair, to try to let these things arise and pass through and not grab onto them and make them our life. Not easy always. Well, then it says, don't try to grasp at life and death. Don't grab at the things of life, expecting that they'll fulfill us and make us happy. Oh, just have this thing. I'll be happy forever. It's just what I need, just what I want. I have to have it. Or this person, And especially if it's something that's not going to do us any good. Don't grab onto our desires if they're going to be, especially if we know they might be harmful. Panting after something we can't have, that's a terrible suffering. Even panting after anything, even if we do get it, it's a suffering. Then we get it, and okay, a week later it's scratched or broken or gone or something, Because the things, as Dogen says, things are impermanent, nothing lasts forever. Nothing is a permanent refuge of the things of the world. Even people, they leave us, they die, we die. Nothing lasts forever. And yet, of course, we can take joy in our life. We can take joy in our relationships with other people. It's fine. But there's a grabbing thing, or expecting somebody to make us happy, or something to make us happy. That tends to squash the joy out of it. But if we can give ourselves to our life, to give our best effort to another being, rather than try to get something from them, we're a whole lot better off. Desires naturally arise, wanting things naturally arises. We're human beings. But we don't have to be dragged around by, I want this, I want that, I don't want the other thing, I like this person, I don't like that person. It's slavery. We're just dragged around by the nose after all this stuff. And we're suffering. And we cause others to suffer too if we keep doing that one way and another. We don't have to have everything we want. And don't grasp at death. Don't grasp at life and death. What is grasping at death? I think it's trying to avoid life, trying to avoid dealing with things, trying to get away from things we don't like, or the difficult situations we're in. Maybe it'll all go away if I just hide in my little hole. The kind of fear of living, a fear of living. But if we can try to accept things that come our way, not to grab onto things and not to push them away, as best we can, the way to the ultimate is not hard, says another scripture. Simply avoid picking and choosing. Oh, I can do that. And 2 minutes later, Bang, it's right in our face. I don't want that. I don't like that. That's terrible. How could they say such a thing? Or whatever it might be. It sounds so simple, and it's really hard sometimes. And then he says, work for the good of all living things with utter compassion, doing our best to help beings as we're able. This doesn't mean we have to go and do some great noble deed that will get in the newspapers or on the internet, that'll impress everybody. It's just seeing where help is needed in our little humble ways, giving help as best we can, seeing where it's needed, not being so wrapped up in ourselves that we don't notice that somebody is struggling with something, somebody needs our attention, somebody could use a kindly word or a little help with something. To see that and just simply help out without making a big deal out of it. That's just working for the good of all living beings. And the utter compassion is feeling with people, not being so absorbed in ourselves that we don't know what it's like. I don't know what it's like to be a person who's starving or a person whose children have all died in a flood or whatever. But if you can just open the heart to sympathy, feeling with, without drowning, as we were saying yesterday, not to drown in it, but to feel with. Sympathy means feeling with. Compassion is also feeling with utter compassion, helping beings as best we can, without being a self that's helping. I'm a helping person. I'm a good person. I'm doing all this stuff, and I can feel good about myself, and I look pretty good. That's not the idea. Just helping out as we best can, without making a big self out of it. And in all of these things, the common denominator is working on our selfishness, because all of these things are ways of working on our selfishness. And selfishness is the great thing that gets in the way of simply following the easy way to Buddhahood. And the reason it isn't easy, or doesn't seem easy, is because of that there's self, which is a constant thing kind of glued to the end of our nose. Wherever we look, there it is. Seeing that filter of self, which everybody has, all of us have that filter of self. But if you can recognize it and see, once again, I have my own agenda here, or I want something out of this, or I'm trying to be a good, nice person, or whatever it is, seeing how it distorts our view of things. Letting go of our selfish desires, our obsession with our own story, all that's happened to me, all the things I've done and all that, all the things that make me a me. Our endless views and opinions. As Dogen says, self is the basis for the 62 private opinions. I suspect there may be 62,000 private opinions, but there we go. 62 is a good start. Our wish to have things the way we want them, or I see that things should be this way and people aren't doing what I think they should be doing, Our wish to have what we want, to have things the way we'd like, even if it seems really good, there's still a self in there. Me is the most important thing, the center of the universe. Me. And everything else kind of revolves around me. Well, we all tend to think like this, actually. And a great deal of our Buddhist practice is training ourselves to relinquish this view of self, this selfish view of I'm the most important thing. Because we all have it. And it's the basis for all those millions of opinions and for all the harm we cause, both to other beings and to ourselves. Our grasping at this, our not wanting that. Self is the basis of all of that, our selfishness. But if we can see that actually we're connected with everybody and everything, I say this all the time, I'm saying it again, we are actually all intimately connected. And if we can just kind of bear that in mind, even if we don't really see it for ourselves, and live as though we knew that was so, that would help immeasurably with the suffering we create for ourselves and other beings. And it would help bring us closer to wisdom, to seeing clearly, True wisdom is seeing things as they really are. And things as they really are includes, I'm not the center of the universe and everything isn't all about me. But how can I help? How can I actually work for the good of all living things, including myself? It's not just self-abnegation and sacrifice and so on, but all living things, including me. I'm just another being. I'm not specially bad, specially good, specially anything. Not separate at all. We're actually pretty much like most other people, each with our own history and our own 62 million private opinions. Back to Dogen. To give respect to those older and loving understanding to those younger than ourselves. We can feel there's a great gap between older and younger people, especially nowadays with social media and everything. If you're old, you can feel foolish because you don't really know how your smartphone works. If you're young, you can feel the old people don't understand you. They don't know what it's like to be young, as though we never were. But actually, everyone is young at some time, would you believe it? And everybody gets old if they're lucky. And so we're actually not that different. And if you can just kind of bridge that gap and not think that we're all a different species, there can actually be a lot of sympathy and mutual understanding and help. All these young people now, this climate change thing, they're really sick of the climate change and they want to do something. They say the old people don't care, they're going to be dead soon, but we're young, we will be bringing children into this world, we want to do better than this, and here they are getting out and doing something. I think that's great. The gun thing, I don't want to get political, but still, I think it's great that there's kids sick of some of this stuff that happens and wanting to change. No matter what we may think about it, you have to respect these people, that they're young and they're thoughtful and they're looking to the future and they're courageous. And I say, good for them. So, regardless of the political opinion anyone might have, because actually, as you could say, the climate thing is not a political thing, it's a global thing, regardless of politics. We keep trying to make it political, but actually it's a global problem. I mean, you deal with it. Okay. Do not, moving right along, do not reject, search for, think on, or worry about anything. Well, this doesn't mean we're mindless and we don't do anything. Don't think about anything, don't worry about anything, But don't reject anything means accept life as it is, as it comes, with all those difficulties that we have, or the things that happen, or the things in our own life, the people we don't get along with, the job we have that's not really satisfactory, the house that doesn't quite work, all this, our children not doing what we'd like them to be doing. Don't reject anything. Accept life as it is and just do our best with it. Accept people as they are. Don't try to fix them. You can't fix them. Just to do our best with all of it. We might need to take action in some ways, sometimes, but we don't want to get angry or self-righteous, whether we're thinking about climate change, or these other things, or just in our own life, not to get angry and righteous. Our 62 private opinions are just 62 private opinions, actually. And there's something a lot wiser than us that's there. Because if we're angry and self-righteous, we're liable to do harm, be unskillful, and that's not what we want. If we can accept things and then do our best with that, it helps. Don't search for anything. Don't grasp at things, we just said. Don't look for things outside ourselves to make us happy. We need to live, we need to make choices, we need to buy things. Do I buy this car or that car? But we don't have to think, if I have this car, I'll be happy forever. And if I have that car, I'll be completely miserable. It's not like that. We just get what we can afford, and in a couple of years, it's not a new car anymore, so we just move on. Thinking that I have to have this thing, or this person, or this situation, this job, this whatever, to make me happy, is not true. Not to get too caught up in those things. We have to make ourselves happy. Nobody else can actually make us happy. We can only make ourselves happy. And we can do our best to live in harmony with whoever we live with, and to try to help them to be happy. And that makes us happier than if we just want to be happy for ourselves. Doing our best to live our life well, kindly, bravely, and helping beings, helping other beings with compassion, working for the good of all living things in our own way. That'll bring us a lot more peace of heart than trying to get happiness for ourselves. Then he says, don't think about or worry about anything. Well, it's a tall order. Of course, it doesn't mean don't think. Of course we think. We have to think. We have to, live our life. But we do think an awful lot more than we need to. When we sit in meditation, we try to let our thoughts come and go. We're not trying to stop our thoughts. We really can't. But we can let them come in one door and out the other. We don't have to keep them in. Just let them go through. Not always so easy. It takes a lot of practice. To let thoughts come and go, not trying to stop them, trying not to get caught up in them, not to grab onto them, to notice when you got distracted, and simply come back to sitting. Without judgment, without criticism, without thinking, oh my God, I'm the worst meditator in the world. Look at all these other people sitting so still and completely mindful. Here I am all distracted. We all get distracted. So not to make a judgment about it, but just to do our best. With all of these things, just to do our best. Not to beat ourselves over the head when we've done something unskillful, when we've been selfish and all that. I can learn from this. I can do better. How do I feel when I do this selfish thing? Not so good, We can learn. Just doing our best. Then he says, don't worry about anything. This means living in faith, not to worry about anything. We've just been talking about all the things happen in the world, the things that happen in our lives. We all have 1,000 things we could probably worry about if we put our mind to it. But to relinquish that, to let worry arise, to look at it, and then not cling on, not to feed it, not to make a whole story out of it, not to nourish it and think of all the other things we can worry about. Living in faith and trust, it's not blinding ourselves to reality. It's trusting in something bigger and deeper than we can see, something much larger than us. Thank God. It embraces everything. Buddha nature, the unborn, Dharmakaya, God, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. We're not in charge of our life. We can't really control things. There's something much bigger that embraces everything. And we dwell within that. Whether we like it or not, it is so. Something of which we are all a part, each of us. None of us separate from it, none of us separate from each other in any way for a nanosecond. It's right here within our very breath. We're all part of that one great body, the body of Buddha. That's one of the meanings of it, I think, the Buddha body. No matter who we are, no matter what we've done, no matter what we think, no matter what we look like, no matter where we are, no matter what, all of us are part of that. All people, all animals, all things, all plants, trees, woods, earth, tiles, bricks and stones, as Dogen says. It's always talking about this. Everything is part of Buddha nature. It embraces us and it sustains everything. And if we can do all of this, says Dogen, you will have the name of Buddha. You must look for nothing more. Now we're not trying to be a Buddha. We're trying to allow our Buddha nature, which is already within us, to show itself. We have the name of Buddha. We actually are all part of Buddha. It's not we're going to get something we don't have. It's allowing something to come forth that is already there. And to trust in that, whether we see it or not. Even when we really mess up, we still have it. We cannot mess it up. We cannot damage it. We cannot get rid of it. We're stuck with it. And so is everybody else. No matter what people do, no matter what they say, what they think, no matter what we may think of people, they're all part of it too, right here with us. And there's nothing that separates us for one moment. to find this, to show this Buddha nature, to come closer to it, to seeing it. It's right here with us, but we don't see it because of our selfishness. It covers it up like a kind of crust. And the more we can kind of wash that away by doing the things he says, relinquishing doing evil things, working for the good of all beings, relinquishing I want this and I don't want that, not worrying about everything, not thinking about everything, not trying to fix everything or control everything, relinquishing at least a few of those 62 private opinions. Just trying not to create too much of a self, to kind of wash some of that away. This is what our practice is, actually. Our sitting in meditation, that is a practice of unselfishness. Even when we're doing it by ourselves, in our own house, or even with other people, here we are with our own little mind, and yet, just that simple, faithful attempt to sit still and let everything come and go, without grabbing on, that is a practice of unselfishness, working on that self-partiality, that view that I'm the center of everything and it's all about me. Just doing that is working on it. And as we train, this becomes more and more clear. We don't know how it works. Even our seeming terrible meditation actually works. It doesn't have to be perfect. It still works, no matter what. Our faithful attempt to sit still, our faithful attempt to do the right thing, to help somebody, to just relinquish clinging on to our old hurtful patterns of mind that may hurt us and hurt other beings, to do our best to relinquish that, and just to do what is best to do what needs to be done right now. This is working on our selfishness. This is allowing our Buddha nature to shine forth. And mostly it doesn't look like much, but it's a lifetime's work. In our own day-to-day life, our going to work every day and living with our family and all the things we do in those little ways, the ways in which we can help out, help our world, help beings, help ourselves to live our life well as best we can. And this is the way to the end of suffering as we practice it. And just being on the path helps with that. It gives us peace of heart of knowing that I'm trying to do my best. Yes, I mess up. Yes, I'm not very good at this. Yes, I'm selfish. And I'm trying to do my best. Trying to do my bit for the world, trying to do my bit for life, for myself, for other beings, the people I live with, all of it. Just trying to do our best. And that's Dogen's teaching for us today. Thank you.